So my presentation as your ending keynote on this one is about video games and how we can really make our clients become the heroes of their own individual quests. So just a quick blurb about me is I'm Dr. Anthony Bean. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and in the state of Texas, and I also run a couple different businesses. I run a 501c3 nonprofit down here in Texas called the Telos Project. And we run, I'm the CEO of Geek Therapeutics, which is a learning educational company. And I run a private practice, and then I have a publishing company that publishes a whole bunch of different types of geek-oriented books, which is video games, anime, TTRPGs, pretty much anything under the gambit of geekery is we pretty much use it in a lot of different ways. And so one of the things that I really like to do is work with my clients on video games. And the big question is, obviously, you guys all probably know what a video game is, but it's always good to kind of start with a basic idea of what does a video game mean, and what are the really big controls that kind of create it, and how does that change our perception of what it is. And so the basic thing is a video game can really be anything that a player and a controller interact with each other. Keyboards, it allows movement within a virtual reality landscape, and it's projected onto a screen of various sizes. It can produce 2- or 3-dimensional avatars. The individual playing the game has to complete tasks in order to kind of go forward. And there's a lot of really, really cool stuff that you can do with video games, especially with the cool controllers that are coming out these days. And I would say within a clinical sphere of what we do is we have a lot of different opportunities here, from virtual reality all the way back to the original NES. Just having them here in the office and being able to work with our clients through a lot of different opportunities is one magical to see them go forward. You'll get a little bit of that too as we kind of go forward as well. So what we've kind of figured out is that the current research in our state, and this is changing, so I want to be clear that this is like in ever evolving Pokemon or Digimon in some cases. It is changing, and every year it changes a little bit different. And this is what the research really started off with in the early 2000s, and it's kind of come up a very big way since then, and it's changed a lot. But this is still what the main concept of what our culture really values in video games in some capacity, or devalues them in others, is that gamers are antisocial and addicted. They have a high propensity for aggression and violence. They have problems with emotional regulation, deficits in attention, problems in school. It causes massive fluctuations in a lot of different ways. And one of the things I wanted to do is just kind of highlight one of the studies that they did, kind of give you guys an idea of how they came to these types of ideas. And one of them was that subjects playing in video games in a study can actually show temporary signs of increased aggressive tendencies, which does not equate to violence. Aggression does not equate to violence. It's not a result of the actual gameplay itself. So the study that I wanted to harp on a little bit is one called the hot sauce paradigm, which asks subjects how much hot sauce would they be able to put on a sandwich with someone who does not like hot sauce. They mostly answered none because they didn't want to upset the other person getting the sandwich. Then, after playing an hour of Grand Theft Auto, which is, the big one that everyone likes to sometimes harp on, is they were asked again, and some subjects changed their minds and added hot sauce to the sandwich. The hot sauce paradigm study actually set out to show a relationship between video games and violence, and revealed that video games temporarily increase aggression because of the subject's low frustration tolerance, not because they are aggressive or that they have a high propensity of violence. It's because they have low frustration tolerance. And the ability to deal with frustrating situations varies vastly across individuals. Those with lower frustration tolerance manifest their upset feelings through aggression more easily. Some video games can be extremely frustrating, especially fast-paced ones, erratic games, things where you just have some really, really bad luck. Similar to playing dodgeball, except that everyone has unlimited balls to throw and their gymnasium is burning down. There's a lot of happening during these games requiring dexterity, sharp perception, and the ability to multitask from players to accomplish goals. And repeating these in-game deaths and mission failures does get frustrating. There's no doubt about that. However, but missing the mark in GTA is very much the same thing as akin to losing at Tetris. The inclusion of in-game violence does not increase a person's frustration, but repeat failures do. And our job is to make sure that we don't engage in this type of culture, and we really work in with our clients in a lot of different ways to increase their frustration tolerance, to know that they can kind of grow and that they can go and move themselves forward. Like we have to fail in order to succeed. And the first step in succeeding and growing is failing. And we have to be okay with that. The basic definitions that we tend to use a lot in a therapeutic context are things that you can find in video games, such as what is your daily boss? What kind of dailies do you have to do? A big one that's coming out right now is how many spoons do you have? What's your what's cantrips versus a spell cast if you're using D&D terminology? What are these types of ideas that kind of help people percolate those senses of who they are, and also have the ability to then reframe where they're going. So these are all things that anyone can do. People manage to do these types of things inside of a therapy session and outside. And so it's not necessarily something that is only pertaining to me as a clinical individual licensed person. People can do this outside. And this is just a quick reframe to really bring the person on in. One of the other ones is we talk about what gear would you have? Why did you choose this gear? Was it aesthetics over more agility? What was kind of going on in? Sometimes we have some of our kids say, like, I'm feeling some anxiety, and they're like, I have an incoming right now, like a monster or that group of mobs are coming on in. These feelings, all this thing is coming on into to really overtake them in a lot of different ways. And, it helps give a lot of perspective to the idea that all of these things that we've learned within video games can be extrapolated and pulled out. We can talk about talents. We can talk about maybe we're in the wrong zone. Maybe we're under-leveled for where we need to be. Maybe we got to go grind somewhere else. Maybe we need to change out our gear. Maybe we need to try something different. It's the idea that we have to reframe it in a way that, one, someone could hear it, but also finding itself in a different way. It's almost like we have to sometimes take some different perspectives, huh? The idea of perspective over across video games has changed drastically, and it's kind of settled a little bit, but it's going to continue to change, I think, a little bit more with the inclusion of some 4D stuff that's coming on out, and I think that there's going to be an additional perspective put on it. As you can see in the slide here, we have different things between 2D and 3D perspectives. And these kind of give us an idea of understanding who we are and what we can kind of understand about ourselves in the world kind of around us. And so that perspective from moving from a 2D to a 3D increases the complexity of not just the video game, but our life as well. Sometimes we've got to have a top-down scrolling, and sometimes we got to move into a second person. But just like the games themselves offer different perspectives, sometimes we have to offer to our clients and people around them different perspectives as well, asking them to challenge themselves, challenge those thinking patterns, those ideas of what they can do with video games to enhance their lives in a different way. Modeling this behavior is intrinsic into a lot of different ideas of a change to help people and our clients kind of like really grow around us. One of the things I always like to do is just point out the different types of perspectives in case someone may or may not have it as clear as possible. This is World of Warcraft. This is one of my favorite games. If they went back to the original old stuff, I'd probably join it again. But it's one of the easiest ways to kind of think about the different perspectives that we have to take versus a first person versus a third person. Are we looking down? Are we looking right behind them? Are we looking through their eyes? What does that kind of look like? Those types of perspectives are vastly important for our clients, but also important for us to, sometimes we need to take a step back. Sometimes we might be too immersed within our client, and we need to understand that sometimes we ourselves have to be the one to offer that different perspective first before they can hear that. One of the ways that we do that is hands down working on the different ideas of play with our clients. So everyone probably does this in some sort of fashion. My favorite way to work with clients is actually player versus environment. And the reason is because we can dual team. And when we work as a team, I found when working with clients for over the last 5 to 10 years, they seem to change a lot better than rather than us working against each other as PvP. Obviously, with some of my 10 and 11-year-olds that I work with are vastly superior at some of the games that we play, and easily destroy my butt in some of them. And that's okay, because sometimes the master needs to be humbled. And in some cases that's a-okay. So one of the ways that I always like to frame this is, what are we kind of playing at? What's our goal? Are we trying to role play our character in a different way to overcome the challenge and visualize that challenge in a different way? Are we trying to attack together and dual team this, or are we looking for a little friendly competition? One of those different things really matters, and everyone kind of gathers a different way. And sometimes I have to force someone into a PvP because they need a little bit more knowledge that, one, they can overcome this problem in a different light than what a player versus environment could do, or a role-playing scenario. Sometimes they need that actual oomph. I'm sure you guys have all seen Nikki's wonderful Quantric Foundry gamer motivation model. It is hands down one of the easiest tools to utilize. It's free, it's online, and I think it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do, and it gives you so much information about your clients that whenever I start working with a gamer client, I always have them take this first. And the reason is because if I know what drives you to play the video games, I know what drives you to play outside as well. And if I need to get you outside the video game or utilize the game in a different way, I know what's going to motivate you. And if you know what motivates them, you can promote the change that needs to be done. So the 12 different motivational factors here, vastly important to be familiar with. I'm not going to go into them very much, because they all have their own thing, which we could spend an entire hour on, because it's just so much information that goes into them, and it's really one of my favorite tools to use. Plus, it's free, and we all like free. So the big question that I get all the time is, how do we work with this population? And I use video games heavily to build frustration tolerance with my clients. A game that I tend to use a lot to start with is Mario Kart. I have the N64 version. I have all the Switch versions. I let my clients start a race. I get them through their first 3 laps, and then sometimes if they need to work on something, I will shut off the console right before they finish that line. And man, that frustration has almost ended up with broken controllers in some cases. I wouldn't recommend doing this, unless you're in the clinical realm or anything like that. But it kind of goes to the idea of those low frustration tolerance abilities need to be managed. We need to fail. We need to know that we're going to fail in some times. We need to be able to have our clients know that it's okay to fail, and we're going to try again. Yes, I'm playing an unfair advantage. However, we need to also know that it's not the end-all be-all, that if a game crashes on us, or if we can't play it, or if something else happens, that we're not going to be able to kind of engage ourselves going forward. So I've had clients scream, yell at me. They've thrown the controllers on the ground. Luckily, they're pretty durable. Once they calm down, we have a discussion about it. I acknowledge their frustration and say, how are we going to handle this going forward? This is a big feeling. Like, kids, they have big feelings. And if we don't work with the kids in the right way for those big feelings and validate them, we're doing a disservice to them. And because it's our job as workers to also work with those kids in a way that makes them feel safe, that makes them want to open up. And if we are to be like, buck up, Buttercup. That's not the right way. There's no validation. There's an invalidation to their spirit, and there's nothing that's going to be able to be there. But after we work with them a couple of times and we have that, you can see the tremendous growth. Be like, cool, that sucked. I didn't like that. I appreciate that you're talking with me about this. Let's try not to do that again. Massive change over usually a 1 or 2 sessions with doing this. And then we say like, wow, you really seem to be improving. Now, if you're more comfortable with our frustration here, how can we improve that frustration outside as well? So instead of avoiding games in a sense that we can make our clients frustrated, we can use those same artifacts. You can use them in a lot of different areas. You can use them in home, in class, in anything. Not just with your clients, but with your families as well. And sometimes, our families are going to get a little heated about us using video games, and it's about approaching them the right way. I think that it's important that we have to make sure that our entire populations are very much involved with what we do and know each steps that we're kind of going forward with. One of the big things that I always bring on up to my clients and their families is the number one thing is that when our parents, and mine included, I'm only 36, and mine included, they still don't understand video games to a degree, which is surprising. Surprises a lot of people. When we talk to them is their time of heroic motifs were through books and through shows and everything. Those things are still present. It's just evolved to another one. To video games are mythology for our clients. They are there to make them feel powerful. They are there that they can feel like the hero. Joseph Campbell is the one who came up with the whole hero's journey. And I idealized the idea that we're each the own hero of our own story, and we navigate through a template of obstacles, antagonists, and cultural struggles. As you can see right here, this is really where a lot of our journey undergoes. And this isn't something that's one and done. This is something that you continuously go through. So after you beat a challenge and you go through that abyss and that rebirth, that death sometimes, and that you come out a new person, you have to understand that you're going to go through it again. And that's okay. That's part of that failing. That's part of that bringing it together a little bit. Us as the individuals here, we form the ideas of one of the 3 big components of this journey, which is called the mentor, the threshold guardian, and the shadow. So the mentor is a teacher or trainer, hi guys, that's us, who helps our hero by motivating and protecting them. The mentor really helps the hero overcome their fears and prepares them for the journey. Whereas the threshold guardian, the barrier, think of this as something that is stopping them. This stops them from making the progress on their journey. It can either be passed or made into an ally. The characters test out our hero's personality and commitment to the journey. The threshold guardian is the problem, and we have the mentor as us to help them think through the problem. And then the shadow is the antagonists that do not think of themselves as bad guys. They just want the opposite of what our hero wants. They want them to fail. They want them to not try, to give up. And we're over here being like, let's not give that up. Let's give it a different world. Let's try to think about this in a different way. These characters are what makes the hero motif so relatable. And this is very, very important for us as workers. And how do we know where to start? Well, easiest first way I'm going to tell you right now is ask your client. When they're playing a game or streaming a show, ask them what they're doing and whether you can watch them. Make mental notes of what you find interesting. And when a break happens, ask a question or two. Ask them why they chose to do something. There's plenty of time to have all your questions answered, so don't try to overwhelm it at once. Once they kind of figure out that you're trying to dig a little bit, they'll just shut down a little bit. So it's usually like 2 to 5 questions is really where you're going to get some really good things. So make sure you have some that are really thought out well. What you're doing is gathering information about the mythology while showing an interest in their hobbies. This allows them to be vulnerable. And when they're vulnerable, that is where that change can happen. That's when they are battling that threshold guardian and their nemesis. And us as the heroic person, we're there to offer them some different advice. Not only will this increase your engagement with your clients with questions about a game, a series, or more information about the mythology of that game itself, what draws them into it, it's going to help you be able to relate to them, but also connect to them and understand why it's so powerful. Maybe they like watching Miyazaki's Spirited Away because of the story's hero. Maybe they resonate with that journey, the sense of freedom, the lack of responsibility because they're feeling stifled at home. Maybe they're caught in a certain medical diagnosis that they can't really get out. Maybe there's something that we can do for them to bring some of these things together. It's one of the many things that we can always do to help out, is engaging the client where they're at, focusing on what their interests are, and let's use that to our advantage. As mental health workers in any capacity, we love being the all-knowing master of the universe, like He-Man and all that. But it's okay for our clients to understand that we don't know everything. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't know, but I'm going to try to find out for you. Even Yoda from Star Wars admits this, and he lives a lot longer than us. And so it might be out of your comfort zone to take mythology lessons from your clients, but it's a huge step towards making a stronger connection. And that's really where I would always encourage anyone when they want to know a little bit more about what's going on. One big thing I wanted to harp on in a lot of ways is we've probably all seen this, in some parents and researchers see their unmoving kids plopped before a screen for a few hours, and they think their children are wasting time. This probably is something that you guys reach in the hospital settings as well. These people are not looking past their child's or client's posture to see what's happening in the game. We can use school as an analogy here really easily. So it's like, say someone's looking through the window of a classroom, is going to see 20 or 30 kids staring at the front of a room for hours at a time, breaking only to bury their heads in their books or their writing tasks. If the viewer does not know that children are learning while they sit in rows of a classroom, they might assume school's a waste of time. Under the lens of Zoom schooling brought to us by the wonderful COVID-19 pandemic, students sitting in a virtual classroom appear mistakenly close to children sitting in front of a video game. Watching screen does not equate to time wasted. In fact, children and clients of ours learn a lot more from video games than we give them credit for. One of the pictures here that I have on the screen is this happened in 2018. A group of 6 gamers who met online got together for the first time when one of their members received a terminal cancer diagnosis. He was moved to a hospice center, and the other members gathered to visit him. His friends showed up to support him, even though that they never met him in real life. Their friendship of 5 years really felt as real as any other friendship. The small detail of not knowing each other in person did not diminish their bonds. It also didn't stop them from making friends in the first place. It actually helped bond them, and it forced this entire interaction. So when we talk about the idea of socialization through gaming, it's real, and it's very important for us to be able to utilize that in a lot of different ways that make us feel connected to the thing that we're playing, but also focusing on interactions with other individuals. One thing I wanted to make sure that I went over, and I'm going to go over this pretty quickly because there's some other things that I wanted to kind of get to, and I'm watching the time right here, is the way that I hands down work with individuals is working with them on the idea of archetypes. And so the big question that always comes up is, what is an archetype? And think of it as a pattern behavior, a constellation of symptomologies that emulate or merge into one big being. Think of it as that way, as a basic example of that. It's a image, a player that we choose to play as, or something else that anyone can kind of feel connected to. It's a being that's better than ourselves, but it almost feels like it's a symbol or a motif that we can play as, or it's found in literature, painting, mythology. video games themselves, as you play as different characters, you're playing as an archetypal being in a way that is boundless and very, very beneficial for us, because we can interact ourselves a little bit more with them. They're found in everyday life in current culture. Individuals unconsciously identify with them on a deeper and more personal level. And then they also can play as them in video games. They're neither good nor bad. They're just present as a form of energy that we as people kind of feel energized and directed by. And there's those thematic, those ideas that we can, they can focus in on our being are good, bad. They can influence in healthy and unhealthy ways, adaptive, maladaptive, destructive and dysfunctional, or functional in a different way. But it's important that we kind of get an idea of who we are, what we can do, and know which type of archetype that we're going to be in there. I'm going to go over some for you here. To give a little bit of an example here, imagine that a snowflake is symbolic for winter or air conditioning, right? While a print of the sun means summer or heat. Blue is also considered to be cold, while red's the equivalent of hot. Place these pictures on anything, and the person viewing them with no words are going to get an idea of what that understanding and representation is for whatever the image has been placed upon. They're experienced across different cultures, identities, everything along those lines to be able to understand what it is. I can show someone who doesn't speak English a picture of the sun. They're either going to say it's a sun, it's hot, or there's a heating component with it. It's the same thing with a snowflake. Those symbols are symbolic and archetypal in energies that kind of create everything else that we can then relate to. So what that archetype really focuses on for us is that similarities between that emotion or experience. The one is playing as a warrior versus a spellcaster, or a tank versus a healer. Those are different types of archetypes, but they're all felt with it. So someone who is in Colorado experiencing an archetype in one way can be feeling the same exact thing as someone who's in New York, or someone who's in India, or someone who's in China. Those feelings can be felt at the same exact time. And those similarities between that emotion, that experience, whether we can put words to it or not, that's the archetypal energy that we're feeling. That's the powerfulness. That's the mythology that we're getting to. And that mythology is what we need to hold on to, and what we need to digest and understand a little bit more. A lot of people are an easy way to kind of get them more of a written way is these types of sayings are archetypal in nature. So when you think of someone who's a bad boy type, you immediately present an image in your mind of that's what it means to be that way, versus, oh, that person's such a free spirit. Those are archetypes that we're talking about, and that person is embodied by that one. That's happening in real life. When we play video games, they can definitely be similar if we're RPing a little bit, versus going and playing that character in a different light than what it's meant to be played. All of it focuses on the idea of projection, okay? So it's when we project a part of ourselves into the actual part, the game itself, the thing that we're playing. And the concept of projection just really refers to the idea of the phenomenon of an individual taking on an aspect of their personality, self or inner world, and putting it into the character, of putting it into someone else, of giving it to someone else that they're playing as. That's where the big thing that we're looking at. Now, when we get to that point and we have to shut the game down, we have to reclaim that that projection. That's where that interesting part, our job, comes into. And the reason is because that focuses on who we are as a person, but also where the change can go. Now, one of the big things that we always see, and this is the archetypal stuff that we're gonna get to, and I'm gonna burn through it a little bit quick. So again, I'm watching the time here. Is all video games, they all start off with an orphan archetype. They all start off with something. an individual who is portrayed as an orphan or child or children who have lost their parents or been abandoned permanently without the ability to care for themselves. They have to overcome this obstacle. So going back into this is their journey. They have to overcome this. The society views them as a waste of time. In most common stories present the hero as an orphan because of the solidarity, the humbleness, and the tutelage history and involvement can provide. It can actually connects with us because we've all been orphaned in some capacity. Some of us harder than others, but it's one of the easiest ways that we are able to relate to our characters as we go through them. How we do this is through the 7 paths of valor. So as you can see on this wonderful thing here, that we have the orphan down at the bottom, and you choose which one or multiple ways that you're going to choose your valor path of the journey through the video game to become that hero at the top. That is what comes into play. That is what changes who we are and how we can engage it. Sometimes we want to be an athlete. Sometimes we want to be a rogue. I know I'm a big one of a ranger and a healer. Like those are my ones I go to. If I play across any of the video games, that's what I gravitate towards. We probably all know these two. They are probably 2 of my favorite games to play as, but they've all been orphaned. They all have to overcome a big challenge. They all have to go through a different way. And you can play through them as different ways. The game itself. When playing a video game, our internal orphan actually is tapped in order to have us grow closer to that character. That's where the projection comes in. So we're projecting onto the character that creates that orphan. If done correctly, the game itself has an undeniable pull that will pull us through the entire storyline towards completion, which can be difficult to describe. Some of those games, we don't know why, we just want to play them, but it makes us feel good to do that, and it makes us feel like we're managing something. Video game players usually have to wait every 3 to 4 years for a new Zelda, but if you look across all of them, they fit into usually 3 of the main ones here, which is the warrior, the ranger, and the spellcaster. Now, you primarily probably play as the warrior, but there are some people who will try to go as a ranger or only play as spellcasting. And it's impressive when they can actually do some real damage in the game. But as we all know, when we talk about archetypes and the idea of working with our clients in this way, there's always a good and a bad to everything. We have to be aware of that, is that good lives within bad and bad lives within good. The 2 portions of light and dark, negative and positive, or even a hero and a villain, they appear to be opposites, but they really are not. They're actually interconnected. Is the saying, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Villains are just fallen heroes. And we just need to be aware of that in a lot of different ways, that sometimes is our villainous nature coming out. One can't exist without the other. And so it's important to kind of know what it is, which one's drawing us. This is one of the rogue archetypes that we work with very, very much. They're similar to assassins, spies, and rely on surprise attacks. They play in the shadows, stealth capabilities, careful and cunning watching. Most of the time, they have an invisibility ability, which makes them very difficult to see. These type of people tend to retreat from the world around us, and when people who kind of choose to play as a rogue, they prefer the shadows, not being seen. They kind of tend to feel alienated by others, not part of the regular community at times, whether it's because of their own issues that they're not maybe conscious of, or if it's part of the community. There may be an inherent fear that the individual is going to fail at an interpersonal relationship, and that's usually where we want to start, is be like, oh, that's really interesting. You choose to play as a rogue. What about that character gets you? What about that? They usually see themselves, from our experience, as different from others and isolated when in larger groups. So our goal is to get them socially connected in a way, and show that they're not they're alone. The athlete. This is the big one that's coming out right now. Esports is a very, very big push right now, and multiple colleges are going to continue to push this. And so this is one of the ones that's causing a lot of concern across research right now. But when you come out of a game or a contest and you feel like an Olympic hero, like this person does here in this picture, it's hard to not try to chase that feeling going forward again. So esports this is one, the athlete archetype, it really falls into the esports. They tend to, what we see is rely on quick actions, key binding, reflexes within the virtual world. They're really, really good at fast action paced games. However, they don't tend to know their limits. And this is one of the darker sides of this type of individual, is they tend to try to go, even when they're finding themselves not mastering the concept anymore. They enjoy the power of the game, but it's hard for them to take a break. And that's really our big job for it, is to modulate the idea that we sometimes need to take a break from something in order to get better. We have the warrior archetype. In order to exist, the warrior needs a battle to participate in, or the warrior would cease to be. Think of the warrior as someone with who plays as someone as strength, vigor, stamina, broad shoulders, muscular. Conan the Barbarian is a great archetypal motif for this. These ones tend to be warriors as a tank of sorts, a person who can be in the middle of a group. That's what they tend to be. When individuals play as this character, they tend to exhibit similar characteristics of the warrior in their real life encounters. They are in fact caught by the warrior archetype and use it to grind through their daily lives. So for an instance, a video gamer playing a soldier in Call of Duty or Battlefield tends to show aggressiveness and significant lacking in their tact ability when it comes to interpersonal relationships. Disagreements are super common. I'm right, you're wrong. There's no in between. It's very black and white thinking. We tend to try to bridge that black and white thinking of, maybe we got to put that warrior energy away, and maybe we got to try to figure out how to engage ourselves a little bit more. That's really what we're trying to do, is kind of like reduce that aggressive feel from them, because that's sometimes is a turn off in social situations. We have the ranger as well, versatile individual, which relies on speed, adaptability, agility, ranged combat, hardiness, usually sometimes an animal companion. They hunt, they stay in the shadows. Think of them as a rogue that is a lot easier to adapt to different situations, and if they get really close to a battle, a personal battle or another one in the game, they tend to go down pretty quick because they rely on that range in order to stay alive in a lot of different ways. The engineer archetype is probably one of my favorites to work with, because the idea of creativity, of trying to overcome the concept of who they are and the problem in front of them, makes them a very big proponent of puzzle solving and how do I solve this problem through a logical lens. They tend to go very logical heavy and tend to stay away from the emotional. Our main job with this type of one is get them to feel that emotion, to be okay with it, to challenge that idea a little bit. And the spellcaster is similar to the ranger, except that they use spells in a different way, and they tend to be a little bit more ranged component as well. They might be using earth elements in a different way. They fight from a distance, but they're kind of considered to be glass cannons. So easily quick to quip, easily put down in a lot of different ways, which is what we always try to encourage our clients to be like, well, instead of blowing it all out at once like a glass cannon, what's a different way that we can kind of handle that a little bit more? We have the healer archetype, which is one of my favorites to play as, because you're always on your toes, because someone always pulls a mob every time, and you have to make sure that your friends stay healthy and inspire others to continue forward. The amount of energy and devotion that these individuals give to others is really insurmountable. These are your usual kind individuals, people who are there at a drop of a hat, able to really communicate with others. And their downfalls, they tend to give more themselves than they take in, and they have to learn that balance, that the ability that, yes, you could help these people, but first you've got to help yourself. And then we always have our fun villain. It's the polar opposite of the hero. It's the thing that we're trying to stay away from. It's the thing that we're trying to integrate back into ourselves in a healthy coping mechanism. Again, the hero and the villain, they have to coexist. They has to be there, and they have to be able to manage themselves. And so when we work with clients and they might be showing some more villainous sides, we tend to focus a little bit more on the ideas that sometimes we have to understand why our actions, and maybe we don't want to know why we did that, because whether it's conscious or unconscious, we know it's wrong. And that wrongness really eats at us in a lot of different ways. And what I wanted to do is just kind of leave you guys with some additional information of the ones that we found to use very easy in groups and social settings. And so, as we can see, we kind of know what Animal Crossing is. It's very big during the pandemic. Super easy to play, super easy to connect. You get to have creativity abilities, progress on your island from day to day. You can fish, you can catch bugs, you can trade, you can do all sorts of different things. You are able to connect with others in a much easier compatibility here, and share a lot of who you are, and your island is a representation of yourself. And I think that's super important to try to utilize in a therapeutic or non-therapeutic session. Esports, super easy to get people to do that and actually have them battle against each other. One of the reasons that we like to do this is because you get to see who are the people that can really do some great stuff, and it makes them feel like they actually are in the room with another person. They're ready to battle. They're ready to try something new. They're ready to do something outside of just being there. So while the last presentation was absolutely fantastic about going over these different types of things, this is one of the easy ways to throw like a little mini esports tournament where maybe someone, whoever wins, gets a chance to get an extra snack or something like that. That's really dependent upon hospital policies, I'm going to say, but it's a good one. Among Us. It's one of my favorites to play, mainly because you have to be a rogue in this one. If you're not going to survive very easily. Super easy game to play once you get it, and you can have your own LAN and your own password games in there as well. Make it as big, as fast, and really adapt ourselves for it. Video games are obviously not as horrible for our children as sometimes the popular media likes to make them out to be. Video games can be beneficial for bringing families together, of engaging, of showing what you're specifically wanting. Silent hero archetypes are beneficial in here, making sure that you have the capability of focusing on what your needs are, and also what the needs of our clients are. It's a way, it's a metaphor, it's a playground, it's an archetypal essence that really our clients embody in a different way. So one of the big things that we always like to say is, let's engage. How do we engage with them? We start by getting our butt kicked in most games. I will not be the first to say that there are some of my gamer clients that are better at video games than me. I know, it's not surprising. Some might be surprised, it's not. They are better at it, and that's okay. That's not my life goal. It may have been at one point, but my goals have changed, and that's important to make sure that we do. So if you're new to gaming or you haven't tried it, your client, your person, your child, whoever you're going to play against, they're probably going to defeat you. I'm just going to throw it out there for you. I'm sorry, you're probably going to lose, and that's okay, because that means we have something to learn. That means that we can continue learning something new, and the client, our child, or someone else other than us has something to teach us. And that brings in a powerful context for the therapeutic relationship, but also in a non-therapeutic, as a family-centric ability as well. And then the last thing that I have is that if you guys want more information on kind of what we do, I went over tons of information. I know I went over it very quickly. These are the types of books that I would highly recommend to kind of get a little bit more information about what's kind of going on and how do we do this type of information. You can also check us out up on geektherapeutics.com, where we certify geek therapists, geek specialists, game masters for Man, we've done schools, we've done hospitals, we've done psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, you've name it, clergy we've worked with. We have tons and tons of different things. Plus, we have discounts for nonprofits, hospitals, and stuff like that. And especially if you're getting larger groups, we tend to do a lot with them as well. So I just wanted to end with that. I appreciate the chance to do this, and I am happy to say that we did reach the end. And I'm looking at the time, and my gosh, we did good.
You nailed it. You nailed it, Dr. Anthony Beans.
Wow.
So good. I know that you had your chat closed during your presentation, and we did have a couple of things coming in. You hit a relatively major nerve with the shutting off the console, like as somebody's crossing the finish line. Something you may want to guide outside of a specific therapeutic environment, maybe
Yeah.
In a patient's hospital room. I'm guessing we may not do that as much, but it's such a fascinating thing.
I would not recommend it doing it in a hospital room. I want to be very clear. We only use that mechanism when we have someone who is what we'd probably say like very, very much on that, what we call that addictive side. And they're probably not in your hospitals. They're probably not there. They're coming with they're avoiding school. They're avoiding family relationships. Like they've shut down every other thing. We have to build that's how we start the frustration tolerance. So that's a whole different thing. It's rare when we have to do that. I usually let them play, but I will blue shell them a lot. And that's my favorite thing to do, because I hate blue shells too. So.
Yeah, blue shells will get you at the worst time. You think you're on top of the world, and boom. I'm looking up through the chat here to see if I'm missing any other big topics or questions. If anybody else has questions for Dr. Bean, please throw them in the chat right now. And as with everybody else's presentations, all presentation materials will be sent along to the people registered for this symposium. But what a great way to land the plane on the symposium. Wonderful material, says Scott S. I agree. And Max Williams says, other than Charizard, what's your favorite Pokemon?
You probably were at our Pokemon panel at PAX West. That's probably what that means. And I would probably have to say Ponyta, because Ponyta is just the idea of riding a flaming horse, or Rapidash is just awesome. Because just imagine what you could do just riding down the streets, and you're like, your horse is on fire, and you're like, yep, keep on doing this. It'd be so good.